Time to talk LSU Tigers. We got Matt Moscone on the line from ESPN Radio, Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Matt, how you doing, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm good, man. You know how it is this time of year. Like, as soon as football reports, life as you know it kind of ends. So it could be worse, man. We could be digging ditches or building the railroad, man. But it's
Absolutely.
a good
There's no
time of
question
year.
about that. I got to remind myself of that from time to time. But other than that, yeah, that's what the life is. It's football.
Right.
It's nothing but LSU football, and the folks love it down there, and it's meaningful. And this is going to be an interesting season, and we get a lot of interesting news. So we got a number of players not showing up for this Miami game, but we'll get to another guy who's been long anticipated stepping on campus and contributing to this team, cornerback Christian Fulton.
Yeah, man, this is a tough case. Just the very abbreviated Cliff's Notes for those that don't know. Former five-star, depending on which service, he was the number one cornerback in the country in 2016. He's from New Orleans. Comes to LSU. There's a log jam in 2016 at cornerback, but he still plays in 3 games. He doesn't play at all in 2017, and we never heard why. Ross Dellinger, then with The Advocate, reported in March that Fulton was suspended 2 years by the NCAA for attempting to falsify a drug test. We've come to find out since what happened is that Christian Fulton went for a random PED test from the NCAA, and he had smoked marijuana, didn't know that he was being tested for PED, so he tried to use someone else's pee, got caught trying to do it, submitted his own sample, passed the test, but because he tried to fabricate the test, it was a 2-year ban. So LSU, Christian Fulton, his attorney, have been fighting this for quite some time. There's a lot of gray because the NCAA tester did not follow proper protocol, and according to the letter of the law, the test should have been discarded, but it wasn't. So the NCAA gets to pick and choose there. And it's tough, Mark. I mean, I know people bag on the NCAA all the time, but this is another instance where you have a good kid who made a very poor decision, I'll grant you, has already paid a very steep price. But in essence, what they've done is they've ended his college career with this. A guy who's a good student, who's never been in any kind of trouble. And it's just so much of the inequity with the NCAA legislation that really irks people. And this is another example. If you go do a Google search of suspensions being reduced, you can say, well, they broke a rule and that's the penalty. It's true, but the NCAA exists in areas of gray, and there's plenty of instances. Penn State had their penalty post Jerry Sandusky reduced. You can go and look at there's been instances of guys popped for gambling that have had suspensions reduced, except in all different sports, Mark, accepting improper benefits from agents and yet still having their suspensions reduced. Essentially, it would have been better for Christian Fulton to literally have been abusing performance enhancers, tested positive, than to pass a drug test but get caught trying to use someone else's pee. It's just it's tough to swallow, man, for a good young guy, and it doesn't feel like the NCAA did him right here.
And I also think that there needs to be a delineation between doing harm to others as well. And we've seen those instances all over the place.
Yep.
And they seem to come out to 2 and 3 game suspensions for players.
How is Joe Mixon caught on film cold cocking a female and misses 4 games? How is Jeffrey Simmons caught on video punching a woman in a parking lot? He misses 1 game as a true freshman. Like I said, Mark, I mean, the NCAA, and you can say, look, well, he lied to investigators. I did a Google search, found an instance of a guy who accepted money from an agent. He was a former guard from the University of Texas basketball in 2012, accepted money from an agent, lied to NCAA investigators about it, was suspended for a year, had his suspension reduced from a year to 23 games. So he still got to play in all the conference games and the NCAA tournament. Mark, if there was zero tolerance, it would be one thing. If the NCAA said, look, this is our rule and this is the penalty and that's it'd be one thing. But there's so many examples throughout the NCAA's history of legislating where they expose and explore those areas of gray. And so whenever it feels like they get to pick and choose, or they do get to pick and choose when they're going to be more benevolent and when they're not. It's tough to swallow. And so this is a really good kid who's a fantastic football player whose football future's in jeopardy. I'll give you one more, Mark. Savion Smith was signed in Christian Fulton's class at LSU. He was another top 5-star cornerback. Savion Smith, because of positive drug test, was going to be suspended at LSU, decided to leave instead of serve his suspension. So last year he played in the junior college ranks, and now he's at Alabama. So there's a kid who found the loophole and never missed a game, let alone a season. Christian Fulton elected to stay at LSU, serve out his suspension, try to get back on the field. And because he did that, he's now probably never going to play college football, which is it's just a very sad thing, man.
Yeah, because when you take away that kind of opportunity, it sends most of those guys in another direction that
Yep.
we know where that is. Not necessarily always in the case here, because you say that he was a good student, but still, wow, when you have to take that kind of hit when you're that special at what you do, and that profession's been taken away, that's real tough situation. And
And
we've
look,
got
and on the field, they're thin as well. I mean, Fulton was going to be a guy, if he had won his appeal, Mark, he was going to start opposite Greedy Williams, and you would have had one of the best cover corner tandems in the country. And now you've got Greedy Williams on one side, and you got just a giant question mark on the other. I mean, they've got some guys over there. I mean, they got Kerry Vincent and John Trey Kirkland, both are true sophomores. Um, they got a true freshman safety named Kelvin Joseph, who they're kicking down the corner to get him reps. They moved a receiver over there, Manny Netherly, to play corner to give him depth. But they're hurting there, man. Like they're hurting at depth, and they certainly have no experience opposite Greedy. So Fulton, as sad as it is for the kid, it's significant for this team as well.
Well, maybe Malik Rozier has one of those nights. Anyway, that's a different story. Where
he's known
everything's
to
hitting the
have them.
dirt. And we've got two other players. Talk about thin, and these aren't star players. They're not necessarily huge impact players, but we're talking about guys that contribute. When you talk about the guard Ed Ingram as a freshman, he started 12 games. He's not going to be playing. He's suspended indefinitely. And then, of course, it just came down a few days ago with Tyler Taylor, the linebacker, who was pretty significant in his contribution last year.
So Ingram was significant. I wouldn't downplay that for this reason. So and so is Taylor, but I think that they have more depth at linebacker now. But the reason that Ingram is significant is you understand new offensive coordinator, new quarterback. You lose your top 2 running backs, top 2 receivers, and you lose 3 starting offensive linemen. Ed Ingram on the interior is a mauler, and he's their most experienced starter back. Ed Ingram and Sadiq Charles, the left tackle, they were both freshmen a year ago that played really significant snaps for LSU. Ingram, with 12 starts a year ago, really turned into a dominant interior player. And so if you're LSU and you're thinking, all right, well, we figure out this quarterback thing and who's going to tote the rock and who's going to catch the ball, they really are going to rely on this offensive line to be good to prop up the other spots until they figure out what they're going to be. Missing Ed Ingram now, and just to clarify, it's an indefinite suspension, but LSU has not ruled him out for the opener against Miami. So theoretically, he could be back. They haven't come out and said that. But what it does, having Ingram out, is it's caused a shuffle of 3 other spots on the line. You have a different center in there because your center is now moved to left guard. Your left guard is now moved to right guard to fill in the spot for Ed Ingram. So it's caused this musical chairs of sorts on the offensive line. So his absence has kind of had this domino effect. On the defensive side, you mentioned Tyler Taylor. That's another sort of devastating story. That's a kid who last year as a true freshman wrestled the job at inside backer next to Devin White. He wrestled that away from a senior, Adani Alexander. And Tyler Taylor ended up starting 5 games, played in all 13, made 32 tackles, and he was going to be the most experienced linebacker other than Devin White returning. And his absence now means somebody else has to step up. But the good news is they got some guys that they really like. Jacob Phillips is a sophomore. Patrick Queen, another sophomore, who they like a lot in their spots. And then they signed 2 freshman inside backers, Mark, who are physical freak shows. One's a kid from Evangel in North Louisiana named Micah Baskerville. Another from Baton Rouge named Damone Clark, high 4-star guys. So they got bodies and they got options there at linebacker. But But Taylor's absence, I mean, that's a thumper who played a lot of meaningful snaps for you last year, and I don't think that should be discounted.
Joe Burrow. So I've seen the
Who
videotape.
are you talking about?
We we we
Never heard the name.
I will be thrown off here if if I don't mention Joe Burrow because you got to fill us in. So I hear he looks great in shorts and he looks like the next Peyton Manning. But what do you think here?
Well, Joe Burrow is going to start. I mean, let's not get it
Okay.
sideways. Okay, they're still going through this competition, but my take on this is, man, if you're at Ogeron, I understand what he's doing, Mark. He's got 4 quarterbacks, and he's trying to keep it as an open competition, but it feels like a facade. I mean, it feels disingenuous. Everybody knows Joe Burrow is going to be the starting quarterback, but he's trying to appease all these guys to prevent any of them from transferring because literally any of them could, and it would make sense. You could also make the case that it makes sense for any of them to stay. So I think Ed's trying to give all of them a feeling like it could be them to keep them happy. But the flip side of it, like where that gets risky, is all the things I mentioned: new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, new running backs, new line. Like the longer you wait to name a starter, you're missing out on reps to work on things like cadence with your offensive line, timing with your receivers, just command of the huddle, timing with your running backs. So the longer they put that off, the more they're missing out on that opportunity to run together as a number one offense with your captain piloting the ship. It's going to be Burrow. Mark, I'd be stunned, like literally stunned. I mean, as I'm watching that game against Miami, I would just do this. I would literally be stunned if any other quarterback than Joe Burrow runs out there to take the first snap.
Well, you got to flip the iPhone on you if you do that because
I'll
that'll go viral. That'll be
I'll gladly do it.
So I do understand the position Ogeron's in terms of messaging to the other quarterbacks and to anybody who's going to be critical of the decision. If you say, Joe Burrow, he's a grad transfer. He just came in or he's a transfer. He just came in and well, I guess he is a grad transfer, just came in and he's got the starting job it's not like Trace McSorley just enrolled and he's proven. So if you give an unproven guy the starting job without even really looking at him against the other guys, I got to think that that's a bad look as well.
I understand, but it's just optics. If any of the other guys were good enough in spring, they would have won the job, and it would not have necessitated bringing in Burrow. You brought in Burrow because you thought he was a better option than any of the guys you had coming out of spring. So which is why Joe Burrow is going to win the job, and we all know he's going to win the job. It's just it just feels disingenuous. I understand your point, and it makes sense. Like logically, it makes sense, absolutely. But if you're just looking at the situation and you understand the reality, like, and something people brought up, Mark, is okay. We'll look at Alabama. Nick Saban hasn't named his starter. The difference is you've got 2 guys that are proven. Like one guy is 27-2 as a starter, 28-2 as a starter. The other guy was a 5-star who won the national championship game for you. Like, you can't go wrong, whichever one you run out there. And besides, he's Nick Saban, so he gets the benefit of the doubt in everything. Ed Ogeron doesn't get that benefit of the doubt. And none of these quarterbacks have done anything of consequence. So they don't get the benefit of the doubt either. I know that hurts feelings, but sorry, that's just the reality. I mean, Miles Brennan, Noel Narcisse, he redshirted last year. Justin McMillan's going into his 4th year, hasn't taken a meaningful snap. So, like, sorry, you don't get the benefit of the doubt.
The more and more this news comes out with various players involved, the more LSU looks like it's just a bad narrative to start the season here.
Yeah, I mean, the really tough part about it is, like, I think LSU has a lot of talent, Mark. Like, you can look up and down this roster, and you're going to see a bunch of dudes playing on Sundays. I mean, Devin White and Greedy Williams are both going to be top half of round 1 picks. I mean, they're elite prospects at linebacker and corner. They got, for the first time in a long time, they've got really good depth on the defensive line that has the potential to be dominant. I mean, if you go watch the receivers getting off the bus, it's the most physically impressive thing you'll ever see. But, like, how does it all come together? Because they just have so much inexperience. So you add the personnel losses that you talked about, and you couple that with the way the season starts where 2 of the first 3 weeks, you're away from home against top 10 teams, Miami and Auburn. And I mean, it's easy to see how it could scuffle early. I mean, if LSU opened up against, like, if you just rearrange their schedule and they opened up at home against Louisiana Tech and then played Southeastern and then they were home against Ole Miss and then they played Rice and then the first week of October they went to Mississippi State or to Florida. Like, they could have that first month not really be threatened in any of those games and probably get a lot better and then hit the meat of their schedule. The problem is when 2 of the first 3 weeks of the shoot, you're away from home against top 10 teams and you have all these questions. That's where a lot of the concern for this team comes in, because then you start to say, okay, what happens if they stumble in those first 2 games? Is the snowball effect, in action? So it's, again, Mark, like it's such a really fascinating year for LSU, man, because it's the first time in a long time going into a season where you realistically don't have any championship aspirations. Like, it's not going to be one of those types of seasons. It's just, can they surprise you and go 9-3 and maybe beat Georgia or Bama and set the stage for 19 to be sort of LSU's back, or does it go the other way? And I think either is possible, which makes it for a really compelling storyline.
So it's a lot different that way, but in the way that it's similar is that statement that you made about the guys getting off the bus and the talent at the top half of the first round with the 2 players, and then just the narrative that the sum of the parts isn't anywhere close to what it should be, and this has been going on for 6 or 7 years.
The difference is you could go into 2016. If you remember in 2016, the year Les got fired,
Yep.
they were preseason top 5. And that team had 10 or 11 guys drafted. I mean, you had first-round picks like Leonard Fournette, Jamal Adams, Tre'Davious White. I mean, that was a team that going into the season had legitimate national championship aspirations. And they lost to Wisconsin at Lambeau. They lost to Auburn. They fired Les. And then it went bad. And that can happen. This team, I don't think, has the veteran experience coupled with the schedule and all the stuff that you need to make a run. And this is the first time in a while, because even last year, you could have sold me last year on 5th-year senior quarterback, veteran offensive line, Darius Geis, DJ Chark. Like, you had guys last year, I mean, you had veterans on your defense with Dante Jackson and Kevin Tolliver. I mean, you had Christian Lockature and Greg Gilmore were 5th-year seniors on your defensive line. Devin White became an All-American. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like you had guys. If you don't lose to Troy and you show up against Mississippi State, it's a completely different season. You're an 11-1 team with your only loss being Alabama. But that's the problem is they didn't show up every week, and they lost by 30 to Mississippi State. They lost to Troy. And it's like, that's when the questions about Ogeron come in. It's like, hey, man, you got the talent. Why are you losing by 30 to Mississippi State? Why are you losing to Troy? And so it's, if Ed can kind of get this thing consistent, and going in the right direction, I think that's as big a question as any.
Well, I don't have an answer for that. The only answer I have is I think, man, you need to get cleaned up.
Yeah, I need to go shave.
Yeah.
Be on air. Got to go meet some clients. So, but hey, man, we're 3 weeks away from kickoff.
Oh, so. Yeah, it's going to be great. It will still be a great game. I can't imagine one of those 2 teams getting away from the other one. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think LSU's got a great chance to beat Miami. Miami lost a lot from a really good defense, and you mentioned you cracked about Malik Rozier, but it's true. I mean, he's a very up and down player. I think LSU can beat Miami. I don't think they can beat Auburn, Georgia, or Bama. I think LSU's ceiling is 9-3. The question are those other games, Mark. The questions are Miami, Mississippi State, Florida on the road, the final playing date when you're at Texas A&M. Those 4 games, in my opinion, are going to determine whether or not this is a really solid season that propels you to the future, or the season that has you going. I think LSU's got to make a change. It's the result of those 4 games, in my opinion, that dictate the immediate and long-term future of the LSU program.
Matt Moscona, ESPN Radio, Baton Rouge, New Orleans. After further review, folks, you need to look that up online. It's a great listen. It's fun. It's comical, and it's got all the nuts and bolts, hardcore sports stuff. It's perfect for me because it packs it all in there. All right, man. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mark. My
Go get
pleasure as
cleaned up and
always.
see you later.
I will. Thanks, man.
All right, we're going to stay on here for a few more minutes as we let Matt go, and I'll answer your comments and questions on the live chat. All right, let's see what we've got here. So we got a really good 25 minutes out of Matt Moscona from ESPN Radio, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. So I hope you guys appreciate when I bring on some really good guests like Matt. And in the previous hour at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we had from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Ken Seguiera, and he talked Yellow Jackets. And that was a really good discussion, good information out of him to get us caught up on Georgia Tech. All right. What are you guys talking about on the live chat? It's got to be LSU Miami. I know with the incidents involving these LSU players, Christian Fulton, the 5-star cornerback, denied his appeal. Tyler Taylor, the linebacker, and Ed Ingram, the guard, the former two or the latter two, were expected to play this week 1 and still may. In the case of Ingram, the guard is a freshman who started 12 games for LSU, and you guys were talking up NCAA inconsistencies early in the chat, and certainly you would hope somebody would get a hold of that and address that. So, William, we know that Ingram is suspended, but does the suspension matter in terms of game time? We don't know that. It's an indefinite suspension, so it's hurting, as Matt pointed out, it's hurting the rotation right now because he's not getting the playing time, and other offensive linemen, as they prepare to get themselves a contingency plan for Ingram not playing, are playing out of position. So they don't feel comfortable plugging that position. So they're moving guys around. And that's typically the decision that an offensive line coach and a head coach go through when they miss an offensive lineman. Okay, do we have the flexibility up front to move guys around to different positions and get the best 5 on the field? Or do we take the 8th best lineman, but we're not going to disturb the technique for the other guys and their assignments, take the 8th best guy, for example, and plug him into the open spot? And that's the decision that has to be made. And for LSU, it appears as though they're mixing and matching and playing guys out of position. So that will hurt, even though Ingram can possibly step on the field. We'll see what gets decided in the next 3 weeks, that Ingram may step on the field for game 1 against Miami, but the preparation time has not been there for him, and it's been out of position for the other players along the offensive line. 3 other spots. All right. What else do we have here? Yes, Mixon did miss a whole season. Obviously came back, played the entire year as a junior, and then that did not hurt his prospectus to the NFL draft. As much as we can tell, he was still taken fairly high by the Cincinnati Bengals. All right. What else do you guys have? Talking about the NCAA, talking about the issues with the LSU players. Want to remind you guys that we have schedule rankings coming out. We're all the way up to number 21, and that's the Pitt Panthers. And I will release the rest this weekend because I've got to get the posts out on the previews and predictions over the next 2 weeks to get us set for opening night, Thursday night. Remind you guys, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, what we've got available, and also the mailing list. So if you want to be on the mailing list, which is going to basically be starting with week 1, and maybe it transitions, morphs into something different as I get feedback. But starting week 1, what I envision is that I'm going to send you my take, my perspective on the week in college football, just a quick summary. And then also there's going to be a ton of statistical information, facts that you can't really look up in any one spot. As I gather these, as I watch college football and scan information throughout the week and throughout game day, specifically on Saturday, I will gather stats and information that will provide you with a look at college football that you can't get anywhere else. Those are two things that I'm going to supply you on the mailing each and every Monday. And then on top of that, if it is appropriate for that particular week, I'll let you know what's going on with Mark Rogers TV and what we have uh, soon to be available, what's coming up, what changes we're making, what improvements, what advancements, and hopefully those are often updates to make. All right, too bad 28. Yeah, the quarterback spot in Baton Rouge has been a consistent issue. So Matt and I not necessarily disagreed, but saw a different perspective on Ed Ogeron's decision and the decision that he's made public. So it's very obvious to everyone that Joe Burrow will start against Miami. As Matt said, he will be stunned in that manner. He will be just floored if Burrow does not start against the Canes. Right now, officially, in terms of what has been conveyed to the public and to the media, it's an open competition. So Matt is thinking, hey, this is not a good situation to prepare this offense for the Miami Hurricanes. And it just doesn't make sense. And it's a ploy to keep the other quarterbacks on campus. But I just don't think, because of Joe Burrow's lack of experience, that he can just walk on campus, especially when you get the likes of a Miles Brennan, who was supposed to be handed the job. It was supposed to be his. He was the front runner coming into this Burrow transfer. And to send the message to the other three quarterbacks that this guy's never thrown a meaningful pass in college football, but he is the starter. We're naming him starter out of the gate and not have a competition. I just don't think you can do that. Now, you can certainly know in your mind, hey, we've seen enough game tape. We've seen enough in practice and summer workouts to know Burrow's far above these other guys and ready to roll. And so there's going to have to be a whole lot that's going to have to change in August to change our minds. I get that. All right. What else? What else? What else? Auburn, not an elite team. Lamar, what are we basing that on? I'm not disagreeing with you. Navy Thomas 8. I'm surprised you haven't heard much from Matt in the past. He is not a huge Ed Ogeron fan. I think he's been respectful. He's understood the position that he's been in and taking over midseason and completing that year in good shape at 6-2. And that last year, as he mentions, LSU was pretty good. They were very athletic, very talented, but blew two games, one in a fashion at Mississippi State that you shouldn't, if you're LSU, lose to anybody by 30 points. And then, of course, the Troy debacle. But there have been other good teams with strong head coaches that have had similar embarrassments. Lloyd Carr at Michigan against App State comes to mind first and foremost. Auburn themselves under Gus Malzahn almost had one against Jacksonville State 2 years ago, in which they escaped in overtime. And of course, Will Muschamp, with all that he's doing really well at South Carolina, at Florida, lost to Georgia Southern. It happens. It shouldn't happen at a place like LSU, but you can give a coach one of those, I guess, during a tenure at a particular school, because it has happened. All right. What else? What else? What else? We've got Caniac Chris, the first time that I've seen you on the live chat, Chris. So welcome to Mark Rogers TV. And again, just send me your email address. Anybody out there that would like to be on the mailing list for the take of the week, also the stats and information that you won't see in any one place, and then of course the channel update each and every week. Just send your email address and your name to markrogerstv at gmail. So you'll have my address, my email as well. All right. Anything else that you guys have going here? Burrow's overrated. If Burrow was that good, Urban would not have let him go. Yeah, I don't know that Dwayne Haskins is going to be a generational player at Ohio State. I think he's going to do the job. I think he's going to be good. I would hope that he is one of the top 15 to 20 quarterbacks in the nation, but he's not going to be Baker Mayfield. I'm trying to pick out players that are similar in not necessarily style, but in attributes, which would be strong enough arm and mobility. And he's not a runner. He's not Michael Vick. He doesn't want to run. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not that type of athlete from that standpoint. And he could. He's mobile. He's not a statue. He's not Drew Bledsoe. But he is. Do not expect, for as much as JT Barrett took all sorts of criticism for shortcomings in the passing game, Dwayne Haskins is not JT Barrett in the running game. Not that he doesn't have the athletic acumen to match JT Barrett, because Barrett is not a just otherworldly athlete, but he was fast to an extent. Again, not Michael Vick fast. He was fast. He was mobile, but he was a very good runner, a very heady runner, and knew exactly the times to keep the ball and when to hand it off. He had that down, and that's why he was so effective in the running game for the Buckeyes. All right. There it is for an LSU hour. We talked to Georgia Tech, so if you missed that live stream, certainly go back. If you missed any of the conversation with Matt Moscona from ESPN Radio, just wait till the video processes and posts. Then you can go back and watch it from the start. At 2 o'clock, we've got Tim Aiden on the line. We're talking Big Ten football. Penn State and Nittany Lions, Black Shoe Diaries from SB Nation. Tim Aiden, 2 o'clock, Penn State. We had to reshuffle with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Could not make his 1 o'clock appointment. We will catch up with Stephen either Saturday or Sunday, I believe. Alabama has a big scrimmage on Saturday, so hopefully we can catch Stephen right after he attends the scrimmage, and he will have lots of information on the Tide. Remember schedule rankings. Remember to use those Amazon links and help out the channel. You can buy anything on Amazon with those links. You don't have to buy the products that are on the links. Just shop Amazon. Use the links that we have in the description section under all the videos. More schedule rankings coming. I'm going to get those concluded this weekend, get that series wrapped up, and then roll out all the previews and predictions for college football. So we will see everyone at 2 o'clock Eastern time with Penn State Football Talk. I appreciate it, and we will see you soon.